national bids also come in, foreign bidders can directly participate. It also facilitates auction, reverse auction, and forward. It's a single product which is configurable in nature. What do I mean? We have been talking about some part of technology today morning. Also, we had a session on cloud and all. So features are different. We don't have a single policy across the country. So when we have multiple features coming in, somebody would need something, somebody needs something else. So you give a bouquet of features at the time of onboarding. It is a SaaS application. So at the time of onboarding, the user can select that I need these 80 out of the 100. I need these 70 out of the 100. Based on that, the application goes live. So that's how it's implemented, which makes it very easy for the product team to manage the version control, the new versions of the software, its backup and enhancements. The main objective, as you all know, transparency, authenticity, no need to repeat, security, non-discrimination and accountability, which is the core pillars of any EGP system, without which it cannot sustain along. Next slide. If I say the magnitude, uh, it's around 0.1 million tenders per month, which is around 31.4 billion US dollars per month. This is what we do across the only EGP system of NIC only. And this roughly translates to around 3,000 tenders per day. So this is how we have to manage the load, the high availability, and the readiness of the software. All these things are to be taken care when we go at this magnitude. The EGP system, the JEPNIC, which you all have been very familiar with, I saw most of you are very familiar with the name, which is otherwise, is primarily implemented in India as Central Public Procurement Portal. And we have various instances we call segregated for defense, for the PSEs, for the state governments, for the central government, and so on, which makes again the implementation much easier. So we have a central certification from World Bank and ADB. Long back, the certification used to be on a case-to-case basis whenever there is a donor. So there used to be a request, and the MDB guidelines were checked, and all. Sir McDermott was the first, he assessed way back in 2008-9 in Odisha. I was just recollecting when I met him yesterday. That was the first assessment of NIC EGP. And since then, now we have a central one-time assessment, which whenever there is a new change, we will intimate and it will be reassessed. Similarly, certification is done by a body called STQC, which is another attached office of Ministry of Electronics and IT. They undertake only audits and certifications of various e-governance applications running across the country. At the bottom, you have the total, number of tenders, value, etc., which you can anyway refer later. Next slide, Nick. Yeah, this is again the year-wise growth in the last 5 years. What is the growth we have had to at a granular level? I have put in. So you can just refer. It's nothing much to talk about. Next slide. If you see, we have around 79% of the procurement is generally civil works, maintenance, and civil contracts. Then we have around 91% of the procurement, which is generally open tenders. So the limited tender, single tender, global tender only account for a very small percentage. This is the last, complete growth in terms of volume and the number. Next slide. If I can talk about the benefits, we know there are many benefits, but first of all, it has definitely led to a paperless trade, savings in terms of cost, papers, no visits of the vendor to the government procurement entities and all. Primarily, once we have had the central public procurement portal as a single portal which brings in all tenders. We have integrated with around 8 EGP systems of the country from 44 different organizations, wherein on a real-time basis the tender flows into a single place. Due to that visibility, there are many advantages which we have seen over the time. First thing is the newspaper advertisement has been And it's not mandated now to have a newspaper advertisement for all your procurement. What you can have is, if your tender comes to the Central Public Procurement Portal, enough alerts and mechanisms are there through which the bidders get intimated about new tenders or new requests. So that is a huge savings. Many times the cost of the tender, one third of the cost of the tender used to be spent on the newspaper advertisement, because four national dailies, if there is a 10 RFP, then there is a corrigendum. That corrigendum also needs to be published, and so on and so forth. Free portal registration. NIC does not charge anything to the bidder for portal registration. No yearly fees, no one-time registration, no per bidder cost, per tender cost. So in fact, nothing gets translated to the L1. It's a direct, the cost to the bidder, which he would be putting in this. We also have online payment in most of the places, and the online payment in tendering scenario is a bit tricky, because you need to keep it secret till the tender opening. It cannot go to the department or the procuring entity's account. So an escrow account model is followed in most of the cases, wherein there is a pool account, and in the pool account the fund goes, and on the day of tender opening, the fund gets transferred to the department. Say irrigation has 4 tenders today, PWD has 3, education has 2. It goes at that 3:30 p.m. when the tender is actually open. Now, this escrow account is also held by the department. Say if it is Government of Maharashtra, the IT department owns the escrow account. So whatever the interest it gains on the accumulation of EMD, that also is a savings on part of the government. So a lot of paper. There's one particular case example, stark example of Indian Oil Corporation, where they used to hire go downs to store the bid documents, and after moving to electronic tenders, it's no more. They used to have 80 people to manage their bids, and they have just 8 people now who do it electronically. So these kind of things keep coming to our notice. The next slide, please. SMEs inclusion. Yesterday we had discussed on what kind of policies are there, and that policy has been translated, like EMD exemption, exemption in prior experience and turnover. We have a ministry which registers the MSME bidders, and unique registration is given to startups as well as MSME. That is on a real-time basis identified with, real-time basis validated with the e-procurement system. So when a bidder is registers, he puts this number, which gets validated, and at the time of opening it will show whether it has been validation has been successful or not, so that the procuring entity can decide accordingly whether this bidder is a MSME or a startup or a women entrepreneur, etc. The platform, yeah. Price bid templates are there. Like for example, the 15% plus minus. So there are the price bid templates can be configured in such a way that you get, once the financials are open, you get a comparative chart which indicates both, and accordingly the procuring entity can take a decision. Coal India is one of the PSCs which had started using this a very long time back, and since then many, after the notification from the government and all, many entities are using it, wherein we have defined it as a configurable parameter, calling it as a tolerance percentage. It can be 15, it can be 7, depending on what. There are certain state SMEs where this percentage varies, like in Punjab it's 7%, so that is for the state SME, so it varies. So in the software we need not make change again and again, it can be configured as per the requirement. Next slide. Inclusion of rural areas. As I told in the very beginning, that 31 out of the 38 states and provinces, 31 are using the NIC EGP. Rest have their own system. There's one, the government directive indicates way back when we moved to electronic system, it indicates that you are you have to do your procurement online. E-bidding is mandatory, but it was not mandated that you use system A or system B or system C. You could use either your own developed software for e-procurement, you could hire a service provider after proper following the methodology, or you could switch to the government system which was available. So there was no forceful mandate of using one particular system, which helped reducing monopoly. There were around 15-20 systems at that time, which with time did not survive for long and died down, because PKI encryption, saving the data, having such a mammoth system, configuring various parameters is not very easy for everyone and not very cost effective also. Second thing, because we had a competition, we could keep on improving. Had there been a monopoly, maybe the improvement would not have been that much to the extent which we have done today. uh, then in this, especially states, provinces like West Bengal, Maharashtra, Kerala, till the panchayat and Zilla Panchayat level, that is the lowest level administrative block, tenders are done online with online EMD and automatic refund. When a bidder gets technically rejected, his EMD gets refunded within T+2 or T+4 based on the bank which is integrated, it goes back to his account. So the ease of doing business increases. We have provided the technology. Maybe every state it's not going till the Zilla Parishad level, but there are states which is very widely using. If you, I have in the last slide I have given the links. There you can see the tender statistics. You can see that states with huge number of tenders is just because the penetration is very deep down and it has been accepted. One example is Pradhan Mantri, we call it Gram Sadak Yojana. I have translated here it to rural road construction. As the name itself, India has a lot of villages across, and we have all-weather roads to be constructed to connect it to every village. That is one of the mandate of the PM's plan, which is a long program of Ministry of Rural Development. So they allocate some funds to every state based on how much rural percentage is there in a particular province. Now the person, I mean the TIA, who is called as ITNO in every state, he has to utilize that within a quarter. Quarter wise, it is allocated. So the complete system is integrated. Multiple systems are integrated together. Whereas sitting at Delhi, the Ministry of RD knows how much money I have given in this quarter and what is the position of the budget which was allocated in last quarter. Whether it has been utilized, this much is under contract, this much is under tendering, this much is paid. So accordingly, he takes a decision of further installment release, yes or not. Startups are given a lot of preferences. We ourselves are using a lot of startup in our various software e-governance activities. Women entrepreneurs, sir has already told today morning about the policy. This I have given the example. Next slide. Yeah. One important aspect is of key stakeholder participation. Unless and until we have constant interaction with the key stakeholders, it's very difficult to have a system which is acceptable to all. If it is not acceptable, people won't use it. Many times people complain the systems are there, people are not using it. So as we don't have any central framework for procurement act or all, so we have states wise, few of our provinces have, and the CPSC, the PSCs have their own board of directors. So as I told, the policies have little variations here and there, but by and large, everybody follows the GFR 2017, which is the latest. So any amendments or issue necessary government orders and circulars were made to start the process. We, as one of you had asked how to start in the beginning, so the threshold of at what level and above the electronic tendering should, you should normally start with the higher value tenders, because the bidders would be of a higher capacity and would have more know-how in participating in electronic tenders. Then you should slowly reduce it further. But for a country like India, as of now, when we started in 2008-9, and the condition now is very different. At that time, IT penetration was not good, internet availability was not this good. Even power failures used to be there in states for 10 hours, 11 hours, there is no electricity. So how do you run a EGP system? But now that's not the case. You have very good IT penetration, and data probably in India is the best, cheapest available. So most of our system is in the mobile. Any e-governance application is mobile governance, through which, whether it was the COVID outbreak, whether it was the Arogya Setu or we had the COVID vaccination drive, everything was through the e-governance system, mobile or internet based. So that has become a very normal, acceptable fact amongst people. Huge size bid volumes can be uploaded. There is no dearth in the space in the server, and we store all the data for a very long time. So far, we haven't deleted, archived everything. I'll come to that later. So the key stakeholders, like we have the bidders, the defense and paramilitary forces, because they have very peculiar different kind of requirement, keeping into the sensitivity of the type of work they carry out, and also giving enough transparency at the best possible level. And of course policymakers like Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Commerce, and statutory bodies like the auditors, vigilance, and the certifying authorities. So we take input from all of them, and whenever World Bank and ADB have assessed whatever input they have given for the betterment of system, whether it is like system malfunctioning or very other features, we have incorporated it, and these things inputs have all enhanced the system. Next slide. Primarily, a quick overview on the EGP. It caters to the complete gamut of procurement, work, services, goods. You are flexible. You have flexibility to invite an open tender, single tender, two-stage tender, QCBS, rate contract. That is the framework agreement, tender come auction. You can have multiple covers, one, two, three, or four. Cover means packet or envelope, whatever is called at whichever places you are. We follow the four-eyed principle. Yesterday somebody was talking about the four-eyed principle. Strictly follow that. Bid openers are people from the tender inviting authority. They designate the bid openers at the time of tender opening. Any four are designated, and two can open the technical and two the financial. So any combination of that. So that many combinations of the bids are stored. Vendor performance, vendor debarment is available in the Central Public Procurement portal centrally. So before awarding a contract, I can check whether anybody has debarred the vendor for any period. Archive debarment is also available there. Grievance redressal is there. There is a module through which you can raise, the vendors can raise the grievance. Uh, Complaint handling is done at, for the technical aspect is done at the NIC level. We have three levels of complaint escalation. One, the help desk, then we have an L2 support, and then we have an email support. There is a detailed dashboard with various KPIs. We have a lot of contribution in that from the World Bank. Next slide. Mandatory use of digital signature certificate was one of the primary reasons with which we could succeed the implementation for the last 15 years without any major litigation. There were litigations, but not against the system. We had enough audit logs and other things with which we could prove whenever there was a complaint or which went to the court. There had been few instances of court cases and all. We have an IT Act through which we have a certifying authority. We have a central certifying authority in India. They have a lot of certifying authorities who issue digital certificates, which is signing and encryption. So that also helps a lot, because you can configure the signing separately, encryption separately. Everybody doesn't need an encryption. If you are a bid opener, then only you need an encryption. So that gives the liberty to, it's issued for a period of 2 years. And if you ask me, the challenge in implementation, the biggest challenge was the know-how of digital signature certificate till the end user. Provinces like Rajasthan, where 47 degree used to be a normal temperature at any daytime, a person coming from the village to the taluk or the block level carrying his DSC in his pocket, the DSC would get corrupted by the time he reaches the place where he has to open the tender. He cannot open the tender at his office because there is no internet connectivity there. He has to go to the district office. So these were the kind of challenges we faced. That is why we brought in four bid openers, so that if any two is not possible, the other two can pitch in. Moreover, in administrative setup, there are a lot of transfers, frequent transfers of officials from one place to another. So to cater to that also, the four bid openers, four-eyed principle helped us a lot in mitigating such kind of issues. So, and one more important aspect, technical and financial, both the bids are encrypted. And one instance of this is that when we started, in fact, as you all know, first it's a paper bid system in any country. Then early, when the internet had come in, early 2000, CVC, which is we call it a Central Vigilance Commission, issued a guidelines that NIC should create a website wherein all tender documents and corrigendums will be freely available, so that bidders need not go to the offices to get. So that was the first e-publishing, publishing of notice way back in 2000. That went on for a period of say 4 5 years. It stopped very late, but it went on. 2005, government of Andhra Pradesh, which is province of one of the most forward province of our country, came up with the first EGP system, and then within 2 years, NIC also developed a EGP system. So from the e-publishing, I mean publishing of the notices, we moved on to the procurement aspect and the complete gamut of procurement. So the hosting has to be in a certified, because as I told in the very beginning, I am from NIC. We cater to all the e-governance requirement. We have big data centers which host many e-governance application of the country. So in that we have host, there is a certain certification like 27001, etc., which needs to be done. We are a user to that. So we pay some charges of co-location and we are hosted there. Disaster recovery and business continuity. Today morning we were talking about who would be responsible if the data or something goes corrupt. At the end of the day, it is the primary business owner who would be at loss. So we have to ensure when we are running an application that the proper continuity of business, the DR, everything is in place. If something goes down, I should be able to bring up the system in a stipulated time from another place if at all I don't have a BCP. Nowadays, we have very good technological advancement with which we can do this much easily. Earlier days, we had issues, we did have downtimes and all, but now it's pretty seamless and we maintain high availability for all the 45 instances which we run. Next, sir. Next slide, please. These are all just examples of how from the early days it has been mitigated. Like we had given a provision of bidder briefcase in the e-procurement system. Whenever a bidder registers, he gets an allocated space of 25 MB to 35 MB, wherein he can put all important documents which he can attach at the time of bidding. He need not re-upload the documents again and again. That gave a lot of ease of operation. Financial bid is in a template based system. So template based financial bids gives two benefits. One important benefit is configuration. You can change the time you want to require. ADB templates we have configured. We have worked a lot with Knight, Joe, Bisma and all. We have configured multiple ADB templates for Mumbai Rail Corporation and also other projects. It's available on the downloads also. So there, the system need not change. If somebody comes with a new requirement, you need not change in the system. If it's a form based, if it's an online based financial bid, you have to change the system. You have to again go for an audit. When it is a detached thing, it need not be done. And also, when the bidder is putting his financial quotes into that and submitting, it is away from the system. It gets encrypted at the bidder's laptop or the client. So your financial bid travels in a very safe, secured way. No matter what happens, it cannot be means hacked in between or compromised at all. So that is one of the very good methodology of implementation. Many EGP systems in India, after seeing this, have adopted to this practice. They have moved from form based to the attached signature based. We have around 15 different templates which keeps on increasing need based. Next slide, please. Effective measure of activity logs, like what happened at what point of time, you need to prove if there is a issue. For example, a bidder comes and says 3:30 was the tender closing, I couldn't submit the bid, your server wasn't running, it was very slow, it was not running, it was not functional. Many times such complaints come, may be frivolous, may be genuine. So all these coming to NIC would be very difficult. So what we have done, we have put a report at the department end where he can monitor the server health status of the previous day, 24 hours, every hour, how much was people had logged in, what was the number of documents uploaded, downloaded, size of the document, and the other major activities. So if I say 3:30 it was not working, he can say from 2 to 3 whether it was working, 3 to 4 if it was working. If there are enough activity in the report which indicates that the server was functioning properly. So similar to this, we have multiple equipped the TIA at his level to handle various issues which comes in. Then comes the audit logs and all. We have AG audit which looks into the data aspects. So there we give the data dump. Then if there is any court, litigation, etc., they ask for the vendor login. We have provisions to generate when did the bidder register, what was the time he logged in, when he downloaded the document, so the complete trail can be produced in the court. So this, over a period of time, we have learned on how to prepare these reports so that the replies to the court can be satisfactory and in favor of the system. Encryption is one of the most important, strongest point, which makes it, very safe, but also it adds on to the storage space because the documents get increased in size when you encrypt it. Process innovation, there were certain bids, certain specific tenders where we used to get 700 bids, 800 bids, 900 bids. So opening 900 bids is a Herculean task for any tender inviting authority. They were very specific, LPG, uh, CGHS, these kind of tenders. So we had given some provisions of quick bid opening where multiple people could open, the 4 bid openers, any two could open with a very simple mechanism. So those things had helped a lot in handling such cases. System malfunctioning is a process where in case the server goes down, which you cannot rule out, sometimes it might happen due to some reason, there is an outage and the particular site is not working, all tenders of that period get automatically extended by 24 hours or 48 hours depending on what day it is. So this process is put down in the download section so that everyone knows it well before, and if there is any issue it will be handled in this way. Next slide please. I think these two slides you can skip. These are the old presentation. What I sent in the morning is not this. This also you can skip. Yeah. This is the growth over the 15 years of the lustrum, last 5 years gap of last, you know, but yeah, you can see that starting from a very small, tiny, we started with two provinces of Tamil Nadu and Odisha. What was most encouraging is people who were using systems of private agencies or other service providers had faith in the government and moved on to the government system, even though there was no mandatory regulation that they had to move on. So that encouraged, bringing in more feature functionality to cater to their needs. Next slide. Yeah, coming to the agenda of this workshop, few of the points which um, align with the GP system I have noted down. Gender equality, it provides provisions, the system provide provision to capture whether it's a women bidder, women entrepreneur or any women participation and accordingly treat during the tender evaluation. Uh, Creating decent work and economic growth with almost 100% adoption. That is one thing across India, this system or that system, everyone is using electronic system to the best of my knowledge. There would still be pockets where somebody is doing a manual tender, but I don't think so. The newspaper advertisements, etc., have gone down drastically, and everything has moved to the electronic environment. So, with this, the perceived benefits of any electronic system in terms of savings of time, price, etc., is definitely accelerates the growth of the country. Increased industry innovation and infrastructure. Now, transparent and competitive tendering has led to many successful public private partnership infrastructure projects with global participation. I think in the last workshop I had, which was online, I had given a talk on this PPP only. We have lot of PPP projects within which government global bidders have participated. and have been successful. Reduced inequalities, this I think we have discussed a lot. Building partnership for goals, a strong partnership is built with the stakeholders. See, it's a recursive cycle. You do something, they criticize, they give input, you improve, then they say they accept. So it's a cycle which goes on with the stakeholders. A constant, interaction with them always helps in improvement. Climate action, considerable reduction of carbon emission due to adoption of electronic process, definitely. Totally, paper has not gone away. I think I should admit that, but yes, it has reduced to a very large extent. And sustainable cities and communities. I think there are around 100 smart city projects in India, maybe, and most of them, I think all of them, the tendering has been done through the EGP system with huge voluminous data going in for there and multiple assessments and all. Next slide. These are the few recognitions which the system has got. The first one is, like, I would like to talk about two of them. One is, which is a NESDA, which we call National E-Governance Service Delivery Assessment, which was done very recently in 2021. Uh, Amongst the central government ministry portal, this was stood took the first place in e-governance service delivery. So there are a lot of benchmarks and against which it is measured, and the depth and effectiveness of e-governance service delivery. There's one more award which probably is missed in this list. That is the Data Challenge Award, which is an NIC internal, my organization's internal contest, which has nothing to do with EGP. What our director general does is that once in a year or once in 2 years, this they call for this contest where many e-governance application, like we have e-office, we have e-transport, we have e-PDS, we have e-hospital. All of these systems of NIC compete amongst each other only on the technical aspect. What is your database design? What you are using? How are you using the best possible methodology? So there are all knowledgeable people there, and they assess it out. We stood second. So even though it is second, but still I feel that's a very good assessment, and which helps us to improve our system from the technical perspective. So maybe next time we would be in a better position in that. So next slide, I think that's all. Yeah, that is all from my side. These are the various links. Uh, Previous slide. Yeah, here you have the product information, the CPP portal link, the dashboard link, etc. As this slide would be put, I will give you the revised version. You can put that. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'm here to take. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Usha. Now, we have run over time, but I did want to leave a little bit of time for some questions. And we've been privileged to have both Al and Usha here to talk to us about these massive installations of e-procurement in very large countries. So I'm sure people have got some questions, because particularly for those who are starting out on their journey or want to transform their systems, we have two experts in the room. So please take the opportunity to ask a question if you have one. Please, if you'd like to come to the microphone and ask a question. Thank you. And could you just let us know which country you're from, please? Yeah, you have to turn it on.
Thank you. Actually, I'm from ADB. Let me introduce myself. My name is Bisma Hussein. I'm Principal Procurement Specialist of ADB. And actually, I have some linkage to both presenters because I'm from Indonesia. I worked for the government for a while and before working for ADB. And then I was also assigned, as Ms. Usa mentioned, to India for a couple of years. So I have chance to interact with NIC as well as with the Procurement Agency of India. So I just want to have two comments, a little bit of question. First, we noticed the similarities of both LKPP and NIC approach because both agencies develop their system in-house rather than outsourcing to external parties. So it is interesting to also know what would be the experiences and what would be the different approach taken by maybe some of the countries here who may also outsource their system development to external parties. Uh, but aside from these similarities, I think they have also different approaches because in the case of LKPP, they developed the system on their own, right? So I guess there will be less coordination issues, and it's interesting also to know how the agency breaks the technological barrier beyond its role as policymaker to support an effective digital transformation in Indonesia. Whereas in the NIC case, I mean, they develop for the client, which is the procurement agency at the central level as well as at the state level. So I guess there will be more challenges in terms of coordination. It is interesting to know also how NIC set up and certainly have effective leadership that enables it to do so, to break these coordination challenges because they have to deal with this many agencies and institutions at this both central and state level in order to allow effective digital transformation in the country. So this is my first comment and question. Secondly, again, as Ms. Usa mentioned, we from ADB, World Bank, MDB in general, we have some additional requirement in terms of e-procurement. And NIC has been gracefully accommodated that request. They incorporate some customization in their system, and it allow, we call it workflow, ADB workflow to be applied to that system, and this is we're thankful for that, and as well as developing certain templates that allows ADB to accommodate, to use, to consider the system in ADB finance projects. But that kind of flexibilities, I think it's important to be shared, and Ms. Usa, in fact, has already highlighted in her presentation, because we hope also all the member countries of ADB also will follow suit and consider the same flexibilities in their system. And in fact, we also hope that kind of ability to incorporate flexibilities in the e-government, e-procurement system is in fact beneficial to the overall development of the system. So again, I just want to thankful for this very detailed presentation. Thank you.
Do you want to answer first, Usha? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bhishma. Challenges, there were many, but primarily being an IT organization, that's why it took a minute of yours to explain where I come from. My organization background is a purely IT background. So developing an IT system in the best possible way is not very difficult for us. What we lag in is policy. We don't understand the policy to the level. With time, of course, I have learned many things. What you see in me today is different when I started. But before PPD, we really had a tough time, because every state would say we do this way, we do that way, and every province is free to follow it. And certain province have that policy documented well, and there is as a rule, but certain don't have. So then we used to take guidelines, whichever is the just executive orders, office memorandums. Based on that, things were developed. But yes, it was very challenging to make sure that what is right, what is the best method to do it. Once procurement policy division was formed, it became much easier, to be very very frankly speaking, because If there is a doubt in case, we would refer to them and they would get back on us that what it should be done. So that is why I very, in the beginning itself, I stressed first is policy. Then if there is a road well laid down, you can drive a car, you can drive a jeep. But if there is no road, you can't drive anything, though you own multiple vehicles. The policy needs to be there in place. Thank you. And would like to-
Maybe I want to add something regarding LKPP views. I think it's not an easy steps that we conduct the systems. Actually, it was started with the presidential regulation. Based on this presidential regulation, gave the mandate to LKPP to develop the procurement policy for the whole situation as well as for the local governments. And then, as Usa mentioned also, to develop policy is not so easy. A lot of constraints, a lot of rejections that we face also in building the systems. But once again, when we try to engage the stakeholder and also the suppliers, the vendors, and step by step we can work. And at the end of the day is how we can show to the stakeholders the benefits of these systems. That's much more important. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Okay. Well, I'd really like to thank Pakal and Usha for their wonderful presentations. They're very inspiring, and I know how difficult a job it is to work with so many stakeholders, not just so many buying organizations, but you also have to have the suppliers on board. And it's a very big job, as you all know, to get the suppliers on board as well. Very inspiring, and thank you for sharing your journey with us. And could you please give them a big round of applause? Thank you.
It's me again. I hope we are joined remotely by Eliza Nevedomska from European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And she also sent Valérie Pelletier, who is a consultant working for European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So what we're here for is a presentation of EBRD about solutions that are connecting electronic government procurement to procurement of private-public partnerships. If you remember, a couple of conferences ago, we started discussing use of EGP systems for PPPs. And we also have taken a note of what Ukraine have done in terms of procuring simple types of PPPs using their Prozoro system. As far as I understand, EBRD have moved forward and developed assistance to its member countries even further. So before we begin, and I do hope that Eliza is online, because otherwise Valerie will need to make things up and impersonate Eliza. I will just tell you a little bit about Eliza Nevedomska. Eliza is responsible for regulatory advice on digital transformation of government commerce and leads technical cooperation activities under EBRD UNCITRAL Public Procurement Reform Initiative and EBRD Government Procurement Agreement Technical Cooperation Facility. She is a lawyer and economist. She holds postgraduate degrees from the Warsaw University, Poland, and University College London, and King's College in the United Kingdom. Eliza worked for Polish government during regulatory reform of Poland's accession to European Union, and upon leaving civil service as a general counsel in the IT industry. Prior to joining EBRD in 2009, Eliza was the head of procurement at power and energy company Polska Grupa Energetyczna in Warsaw. So Eliza couldn't join us. She's somewhere traveling. Okay, I hope she's there. She's there online. Eliza couldn't join us in person, but she sent Valery so that he can answer questions because he works with her. Valery Peltier supports the Legal Transition Program in its advisory capacity on digital transformation projects relating to the development, procurement, and management of public-private partnership contracts. Valery has managed the development of social and economic infrastructure projects in Europe and Africa, ranging from about 10 million euros to 900 million euros in capital expenses, for which he has led negotiations on concession agreements, design, build, operate, maintain contracts, and power purchase agreements. Valery holds postgraduate degrees from ESTP Paris in civil engineering and University College London in infrastructure investment. So I'll turn over to Eliza. Eliza, I'm extremely happy to see you.
Good morning, Galia. Thank you so much for having us here, and my apologies for not being there in person. But at this opportunity, I have to blame a delightful flu who kept me in London and didn't allow me to travel much. But Valerie is there, and I hope that you also have your ADB colleagues available who are relevant for our topics. So I'm very happy to have this presentation for the conference from London. Good afternoon to you. Good morning to everyone in Europe. When we were discussing what is perhaps the most interesting for the audience on this opportunity, the decision was that most probably you would like to hear about actual project that is happening on the ground and delivers e-procurement functionalities for concessions and PPPs. And this is where we are. This is an actual project that we are implementing in Ukraine presently. And this project has had a very fortunate beginning here at your conference in 2019, when we were discussing about a potential for having electronic procurement functionality for concessions and PPPs. And what has happened since? We have been working in parallel on regulatory framework and technical concept for the e-procurement for concessions. But at the same time, the bank has been working with SOURCE, which is a Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation platform that has been funded by IFIs a couple of years ago, to make sure that we can have a complete process for concessions, for PPPs, including e-procurement. So everyone who works with infrastructure knows that the process that is there is essentially 4 major steps. All the work that goes into project preparation, Then we have tender design and tender preparation. Then we have tender process, and then we have contract management. And of course, for procurement people, we focus on tender preparation, we focus on tender process. However, from a time perspective, we have to put in front of us the fact that all the preparatory work takes from a year to a year and a half, and this is happening before procurement. And then we have the tendering process, which normally takes 3 to 6 months. However, there are projects when it takes longer. And then we have actually the implementation of the concession and PPP that can take up to even 20 years. So from a procurement perspective, we had to understand how this case for designing e-procurement system for concession and PPPs has to fit the overall life cycle for infrastructure projects, and how we can work with the tools that are already available. Source has started its life almost 7 years ago now, and is providing some additional functionalities throughout all the steps of the procurement of the infrastructure process. But our project has focused on what has to be added to the e-procurement system in Ukraine, which is called Prozoro, to make it suitable for concession and PPPs. And for those of you who don't know what Prozoro does, Prozoro has been born in 2015 out of the Maidan revolution. It's a very transparent system that has been set up by Ukrainian government mainly to prevent corruption and make all the procurement data available to the market equally through the use of open contracting data standard. However, this system until presently does not have a special procedure for concession and PPPs. And why this special procedure is needed? It is needed because the tender for concession and PPPs is very complex. So in terms of new procurement procedure in the electronic format, as you may understand, going electronic and using structured data for Prozoro, this is a piece of cake. But to understand the requirements for concessions and PPPs, this is a totally separate question. And we have come to the conclusion that essentially e-procurement has to provide for extended tender preparation module, and this module should be matching whatever has been done by the government to prepare the project, and if possible, collect the data electronically from other e-government systems. What next? In concessions, there is a sensitive commercial information that can be provided only to the qualified bidders. So we don't have all the information available from the beginning of the tender to everyone. So qualified bidders, they have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and then they will be able to have access to the confidential data. So for this reason, an e-procurement system has to have a confidential data room, which is not a standard feature of the e-procurement system as such. And finally, the e-procurement system has to have extensive market consultation module. This is because market consultation in the concession and PPP processes, they can happen during tender preparation, and they can happen during the tender itself. So this is also the practice that has been new to the Prozoro, because they normally use it only occasionally for higher value projects, and there was no such thing as market consultation in the system. And finally, we have the core concepts of the single stage and multi-stage procedure. On the single stage procedure, the most important component has been related to pass-fail qualification of participants and making sure that for lower value concession, one stage tender is functional. For high value concession, the standard procurement process is two-stage and it covers qualification and selection of the candidates or participants, and then inviting them to submit their proposals. And these proposals are based on so-called output specification. And this is something that is not so standard for ProZorro. So these components, they had to be prepared and designed. And we have been working on this project when the war happened. So you understand that Ukraine, after the war, will be in a need of any type of investment in infrastructure coming from state budget, coming from donors, coming from European Union, coming from private sector. So all types of infrastructure contracts, they have to be served by ProZorro. So here we are looking at the need for extensive contract management system for ProZorro. And this is where the considerations are today. How to make sure that the e-procurement module for concessions and PPPs may serve, the concession may serve PPPs, but may also be used for other high-value procurement as needed. So I'm not gonna be boring you with the details that we have been discussing through, but I would like to stop on the transparency of procurement. And this is where requirements for e-procurement module for concessions are mainly focused, because we understand that governance standard for the projects that will be reconstructing the Ukraine, they will be pretty high, considering that a number of governments is supporting the country and the government is also progressing their commitments with European Union. So Ukraine is presently formally a candidate country, starting the harmonization process for the candidate countries. So looking at what has to be done to make a functional tool that covers digital process from beginning to the end. We have looked at what Ukraine has, what Ukraine does not have, and come up with a list of 8 new modules that are essentially required. And out of these modules, you can see that there is an emphasis on using ProZorro as it is today. And there is also an aspect of ProZorro developing a new digital procurement engine that would handle a more sophisticated selection of candidates and more sophisticated multi-criteria online evaluation. And you may ask, okay, so procurement is here, 5 and 6. What's the reminder? The reminder is in source. And source has to be also extended to make sure that functionalities of the system are allowing the government to run the entire project lifecycle from project design and preparation to contract management electronically. And this is a very demanding regulatory project as well, because it does not include only designing the e-procurement tools, but it also involves putting a new methodology of work for digital tools for infrastructure in the country. So as you see, this is where we are today. So the Ukraine has prepared damage register, and this is going to help to identify the infrastructure that needs priority considerations. Then we look at what sources contributing through the new or upgraded functionalities. And then we have the work around procurement, which is focusing on tender preparation, confidential data room, market consultation, essentially two-stage tender, and contract registration for management. Because contract management and its performance management will be a priority component for all the donors that are contributing to the project. And here at the end, you have highlighted two analytical modules. And these analytical modules are serving the daily use for reporting and any progress or results reports that are required from the process. But we also have here a monitoring module to allow an understanding of compliance of the procurement process, compliance of the contract management process. So where this is in real life today? Today, we are actually waiting for evaluation of the regulatory framework and technical concept by the OECD. And as soon as this will be accomplished, and we hope it's going to be in March, a pilot of the digital tool will be launched. How it is important for the government, I think that you don't need to be persuaded about. How it is important for us, this policy advisors, this is a project that allows us to look how e-procurement works with other tools. And here we have a very clear example that we can build integrated systems of various technologies in various countries, provided that they share one feature. And this one feature is interoperable data. And this link between source, Prozoro, and source for contract administration and performance management, it is possible because the project is based on using open contracting data standard throughout project design and preparation stage, using the same standard for the procurement process, and finally, using the same standard to collect the data throughout the contract execution to enable administration, performance management, reporting, and monitoring. And this is the key message that I would like you to take from this presentation, that we are able to improve the e-procurement functionalities, and we are able to link them with other e-government systems, also for such challenging cases as Ukrainian reconstruction project that has to be prepared by the government presently, provided that we are taking care not only about procurement itself, but also that we put it in the context of infrastructure project preparation, as well as centralized procurement processes. Here you have a case how e-procurement may support infrastructure and how the procurement may support the sustainability objectives that are voiced by the Ukrainian government that is intending to build the Ukraine better after the war. So this is the pilot project in question. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Eliza, for giving us this update on use of Source and Prozoro. We've heard about it last year, and we've heard that the common language that Source and Prozoro speaks is open contracting data standards. So I'm giving the floor to questions, if there are any. Any questions? Okay. Interesting. So I guess we either spoke to an audience that understands everything, or we spoke to the audience that understands nothing. So I'm not quite sure where we are. So I'll just let Valery explain his role in the project and tell us a little bit about his involvement in setting up this link between Source and Prozoro.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having us for this event. So yes, I've been working for the Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation for a couple of years, and then I joined Elise's team to share my experience from the private sector in infrastructure investments and work on the interconnection of the Source platform with e-procurement tools. So we use OCDS as an international standard so that the different tools of the government can speak together. What Source does and other procurement tools don't is cover the infrastructure project preparation phase, that 6 to 18-month phase that Elisa was talking about at the early end of the project lifecycle. And what we're trying to accomplish with the LTP team is to transfer and transition this project preparation tool, which is in effect a data repository system that summarizes the NDB's approach to concessions and PPPs into a transactional tool, allowing the completion of the different tasks that are required as per law and regulation to happen in the digital environment.
Thank you, Valery, for this explanation of your role and the explanation of the source. Just to give you some idea, I'm not sure that Google works very well in this room, but it definitely works in the corridor. Maybe at a break you can check it. Source is actually a platform for so-called project appraisals. So project appraisals for PPPs, so public-private partnerships, are used by advisory services and by multilateral development banks. Like you probably know that ADB has two windows, one sovereign, one non-sovereign, and another is private-public partnership office, which actually provides advisory services. EBRD provides advisory services and lends money to the private sector. And International Financial Corporation and World Bank Group does the same. So multilateral development banks actually use the same platform, Source for Appraisal, which practically looks at investment landscape and the best way of structuring the transaction, because there is a continuum of different PPP options, from management contracts to concessions, depending on the risk profile and the government objectives, and also depending on whether it is the government pay or the user pay type of a transaction. Why it was important to talk about the difference between a normal public procurement system, which is all about transparency and all about openness, and the difference with the PPPs is because PPPs, by the nature of it, has confidential, commercially privileged information. And this confidential and commercially privileged information, including the commercially privileged information of the bidders, is the thing that needs to be safeguarded. And because it needs to be safeguarded, the use of normal e-procurement system for PPPs at first was discounted. but then was found that by partitioning some of the data and by structuring it differently, it can actually be used. And finally, as we know, in terms of contract administration and contract management, a lot of EGP systems actually lack contract management functions. And source is actually used both for appraisals and for contract management, but not for the missing part of tendering for PPPs. And this is where this pilot of EBRD with Prozoro and Prozoro sale, which is used for sale of government assets or disposal of government assets and sale of licenses, has been tweaked to be used. So I hope this explanation have spurred some questions. Any questions from the floor?
Well, if
Yeah,
we don't
please,
have
please.
any questions from the floor,
Eliza, there is a question.
okay,
I'm sorry, I
let's
may not
have
have a
it.
question. It's more of an observation from my side. Just to give an introduction, especially to my friend from UK. I'm from India. I look after the procurement policy, and perhaps India is one of the biggest concessional market across the globe as of now. If you see the concession as whole, rightly divided into three categories: appraisal, tendering, and the post-contract. If you see the middle part, tendering per se, perhaps there's no need to have any very different system what the normal EGP system is having. In case of India, we have done concession, we are doing concession almost $30-40 billion every year for last 1 decade. So it's almost aggregate of more than $500 billion. We use the same system which the Usha has just given a presentation without any issue. The only issue which comes with an appraisal and the management. So perhaps the middle portion can be substituted by any other system. It really doesn't make. So you only need to write the web services from both the sides. The APIs will work. That's my observation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this observation. Eliza?
Yes, thank you very much, because this observation has actually brought the question that I wanted to share with you, because this is what we normally hear. And the question is as follows: can any e-procurement system be integrated with source platform and provide the government digital functionalities for project preparation, for procurement, and for contract management? And the answer is yes, because when you just heard about standard e-procurement system being used for the evaluation of the proposals, and we understand that this is an ongoing practice, and we have been looking into this experience when researching for the Ukrainian project. So I'm very grateful for this example, because it helped us a lot to pinpoint the issues. And when we wanted to have for the e-procurement both the qualification, selection, and evaluation electronic, we had to fine-tune Prozoro a bit to make it capable to handle consortia, joint ventures, and any more complex participants, because this is a feature of the procurement and concession process, that we are having a number of commercial companies bidding together. But if you would ask me, would it be possible to integrate source with the e-procurement without the use of open contracting data standard as an interoperability standard for this process? The answer is no, because some standardized approach is required to make sure that transactions that are handled by the government preparing the project, e-procurement, and the contract management, they speak the same language. So thank you very much, Galia, for a new term because we were missing it. And now we understand that e-procurement for concessions and working with platforms for project preparation, this is actually possible down to the common language they can speak if they speak of OCDS.
Thank you very much. If there are no questions, we will close this session. And very fittingly, our next session is about open contracting data standards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All the best. I'm staying online to join colleagues. Thank you.
Please come back in 10 minutes. Please come back in 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Enjoy your break outside.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope the people in the hallway can hear me. We do have a couple more sessions to go. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we have to come back into the hall after the break. But feel free to bring your coffee, drinks, and snacks in with you so we get started, because we have a couple of speakers stationed elsewhere that are virtually. So hopefully we get started in a couple of minutes. And the other thing Nighty had asked me to mention too is to make sure everybody did sign the attendance sheet outside, as well as I imagine most of you have been visiting Apple at the back with your boarding passes because you want your allowances to come through. So the same with signing in on the attendance sheet. So please make sure everybody had signed the attendance sheet. I probably should have said for everybody who rushes back in right now, ADB will delay your flights now. Anyway, well, thank you for everybody for rushing back into the room. We're going to get started with session 11, the second last talk of the 2 days. I know it's been a packed couple of days with a lot of sessions going on, but we're almost through them, and you'll be able to enjoy yourselves this evening. I know I can taste my first 3 beers really quickly right now. So hopefully we'll be able to move forward real quick. Today, or this session, you've heard throughout the last 2 days open contracting data standards mentioned a number of times. Essentially, it's a tool to help identify and use in support of e-procurement. It's not like the e-procurement itself, but for many who are already running the systems, every system itself, there's 2 parts to it. One is you're managing the process for your officers to conduct their procurement, whether it's a direct purchase on a catalog or running a tender. The other side is, what do you do with that data once that is done? Because the most valuable asset of your e-procurement system is not just the procurement transaction, it's the data you're collecting from the system. And it's the data that's going to give you the value, because you're going to analyze the data, not individual activities. You're analyzing information over time. Your EGP system, it will always evolve. Some other process will come into play. You're always going to make change. Some technology thing will come along. At the end of the day, the constant is your information that you're collecting. And one of the good things about information is you can analyze that and do variable things and help you develop policies and changes and understand what's going on and how I might want to change my procurement practices or anything else, and whether I'm getting the right value or I'm achieving my goals, because I can measure the things I want to measure. And the Open Contracting Data Standard is a tool set, and it's not that your system complies with everything, but one good thing if you're already running a system is to understand all the different data elements you could collect within your system to help drive the information and answer the questions you want to have. And so today we have 2 speakers joining us from Open Contracting. We have Nanda Seombang and Andre Azin, both of whom are, Nanda is in Jakarta, or in Indonesia, outside Jakarta, and Andre is joining us from the Ukraine in Kiev. So they're both coming in live, and they'll be doing their presentation. I'm not sure if they're on. There they are. Welcome. Welcome to Manila. So virtually. So good to see you both again. And Andre, I hope you're doing very well. So they're both part of Open Contracting, who promote the use of open contracting data and help countries and organizations implement and understand the data standards to take full advantage of the information you're collecting. Because at the end of the day, what you want to do is leverage as much value from your data as you possibly can to help drive your business decisions in support of your public procurement. So I'll let Nanda and Andre get started with their presentation. So please welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Joe. So I will share my screen and I will try to start my screen. Let me try. So first of all, thank you. Let it load first. Okay, first of all, thank you ADB, thank you Joe for opening, and thank you everyone to stay tuned for our presentation today. So today there will be 2 of us from the Open Contracting Partnership. Thank you for inviting us. I'm Nanda Sihombing, the Senior Program Manager for Asia. And together with me, there will be Andre Hazin, the Senior Data Support Manager. So we'll start. Today in this session, we're going to look at what open contracting is and how it can help your objectives We'll also discuss the value of having structured contracting data, and we'll give an introduction to the Open Contracting Data Standard, or OCDS. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation, but feel free to raise your hand if you would like to ask something during the presentation, or let Joe knows about your question. And let's start. We're going to start about what is Open Contracting Partnership, what do we do, and how we can help you. So we at the Open Contracting Partnership, we work with government, businesses, and civil society to transform public procurement to deliver better goods, services, and works for everyone. Using the power of open data and effective user involvement, we help to reduce corruption, improve efficiency, enhance competition, build credibility and trust, and deliver better value for money. At the core of work, we work with data standards, which help stakeholders publish and use standardized, structured, machine-readable open data in a timely manner so that it is easier to understand what works and what doesn't, and from there, introduce reforms. We work in more than 50 countries and cities around the world. This includes counterparts from India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, amongst others, who are pursuing open contracting reforms at the national or subnational level. It takes hard work, political will, technical skills, and sustained engagement to implement the open contracting agenda. So as we mentioned already earlier, at the core of our work, we work with 2 data standards. We develop and maintain and support governments and municipalities across the world to implement 2 data standards. The first one is called OCDS, Open Contracting Data Standards, which is meant for publication of data related to all stages of procurement, from planning, tender, award, contract, and implementation. The second one is called OC for IDS, Open Contracting for Infrastructure Data Standard, which is meant for data disclosure about infrastructure projects. As we believe transparency is a means to an end and not an end in itself, we work with impacts on our mind. From Italy to Indonesia, from Bogota City, Colombia to Assam State in India, we've been seeing many results of implementing open contracting, including better access to affordable medicines, healthier school lunches, and improved competition are amongst many of the impacts we see when government implement open contracting approach. One of the examples is from Colombia and how they have improved their market competition. Government of Colombia start by standardizing their procurement data set with OCDS and then implement a series of reforms which has helped them to get more vendors bidding to the opportunity. They also see there are more tenderers and there are fewer one-bid tenders in the first 2 years of their implementation alone. In Bogota City, Colombia, the open contracting approach also helped reducing direct contracts in favor of competitive tenders, and also increased supplier diversity in the way school meals are procured and delivered to school children. What's amazing is that they managed to increase their supplier diversity for school meals from 14 providers, which predominantly big companies, to 55 suppliers, including specialized companies and smaller businesses. In Ukraine, before the recent war, open contracting is used in the government's first online store driven by open data, as some of you might have heard already from the previous session. In 3 years of the first implementation alone, it helped them gain more revenue, more volume in auctions per quarter, even more bidders. Another example comes from Nuevo León, Mexico. Using information from the new open infrastructure platform called Infrastructure Abierta, the government identified past contractors with good track records and established benchmarks that allowed them to buy fast and transparently. Having comprehensive information on public works projects, including data on contracting processes, their costs, their contractors, funding source, procurement methods, payment, among many other details in one place, allows contractors to find tenders as soon as they are advertised without having to troll through multiple different sites or platforms, which in turn enables them to plan their proposals more efficiently. Competition and participation have increased by 25% since 2017. In addition to the increase of average number of bidders per tender, more than 90% of the bidders have multiple tenders, and this is important. So it means that it does not only provide a one-time opportunity, but a more sustained opportunities for opening up public procurement. And those are some of the examples that we shared briefly. Now that you know who we are and what kind of work we do and what kind of results we achieve, let's talk about one of our main products, open contracting data standards. My colleague Andrew will be sharing about it. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Nanda, for this great introduction. And you've heard about the OCDS during previous sessions today. And now my job is to explain to you what it is in detail and how it works. As I work in a position of senior data support manager here at Open Contracting Partnership, I help governments and municipalities to work with their data, to understand the value of the data they have. And I do that with the help of Open Contracting Data Standard and all the tools related to this standard. So what it is? So most important part, as Joe previously mentioned, that OCDS is not a procurement system. We are not trying to sell you a new EGP system. You can still use whatever you're using currently. So of course, we can help you to improve it. But mainly OCDS is related to data publication. So e-procurement systems digitize all of parts of the procurement process. For example, buyers publishing tenders or potential suppliers submitting bids and buyers evaluating bids and awarding contracts. All of these activities result in creation of data, and typically data stored in the database of e-procurement system. OCDS describes how to disclose that information as an open data in a standardized structure and format. Disclosing contracting data using OCDS encourages the development of reusable tools and methodologies based on OCDS data. If there is one key takeaway here is that OCDS isn't an e-procurement system. It is a standard for the disclosure of data. And Open Contracting Data Standard, in its essence, implies several different broader concepts: open contracting, open data, and of course, data standard. So open contracting is all about disclosure and participation. The open contracting principles cover a wide range of areas of reform to improve the use of public resources. Sorry. I think, yeah, I think someone tried to take over my presentation. Sorry. You're sharing it now, okay. So OCDS builds on principles of open contracting, and the ultimate goal of OCDS is to deliver open contracting. Next important principle is open data. And open data is the idea that government should publish their data so that it can be reused. This requires data to be accessible, machine readable, and some kind of licensing for reuse of this data. And next principle is a data standard. And data standard sets out how to format data so that it is machine readable and it resolves ambiguity and helps system and people work out how to interpret data. Open Contracting Data Standard is a free and non-proprietary open data standard for public contracting, and it is implemented by over 30 governments around the world. It is the only international open standard for the publication of information related to planning, procurement, and implementation of public contracts. And it has been endorsed by major international organizations. So why do you need data standard? There are many reasons to. So even if some contracting data is already published, there are some common blockers to using the data to understand public contracting in many countries. So for instance, contracting processes in some countries still take place on paper, and some governments have no central source of contracting data. Or some governments publish data, but only about tenders or only about awards, and very few governments publish data on implementation. Or in many countries, linking data between tenders and awards is difficult and harder still to join up planning and implementation data. Or for instance, the meaning of fields in published data is unclear, and it's hard to tell whether values relate to tender or award, or where are company numbers drawn from. Or finally, data that is published based on what's available or what was included on historical paper notices, and not on what actual users of contracting data need. And of course, there are so many ways to format and structure data, so it's hard to make it usable and interoperable. Let's take a look at this simple example. There are many different ways to write a date, and it's quite hard to work with the data where different formatting practices are used. That's where data standard steps in. The data standard sets out how to format data so that it is standardized and machine readable. A data standard resolves ambiguity and helps different systems work out how to read data, how to interpret information. So you can make sense of the data and you can compare like for like. So data standard makes data interoperable. And OCDES describes a way to model and publish data. OCDES defines a unique contracting process as all actions aimed at implementing one or more contracts. An individual contract process has several different stages like planning, tendering, awarding, contracting, and implementation. And OCDES describes a way to model and publish the data in a standardized way along entire public contracting processes. So OCDES brings together this data published at each stage using a single open contracting process identifier, what we call OCID. And OCID is composed of a prefix that is registered by the publisher with open contracting partnership and unique process identifier that is chosen by the publisher. The OCID helps users to join up data across the whole contracting process, and it is a key feature and benefit of publishing and using OCDES data. There are three main components to OCDES. First one is a schema, and schema is the heart of data standard. Our JSON schema is setting out the fields, structures, data types, and validation rules for OCDES data. In principle, OCDES defines specifically JSON schema, but we support other formats for publication like CSVs or XLS. So we support tabular data as well. Second key component is a documentation side. And documentation side explains how to use the schema and how to package data for different scenarios, how to publish it. And third component is governance. And governance defines our internal processes for improving and changing standard. Important thing to understand here is that data standard evolves and we are learning from our users about different needs for data standard. So now that we know what is open contracting data standard, let's talk about how and why should we implement it. Here at Open Contracted Partnership, we usually divide OCDES implementation journey into 4 key phases: design, map, build, and publish. Let's talk about them in detail. So Design phase is all about setting goals and defining your priorities in order just to better define milestones and measure your results. And usually during design phase, we perform several activities. First of all, we have to understand your context. For instance, how does public contracting work in your particular jurisdiction? And what does the law oblige to publish? Or are there any barriers for openness? Or which stakeholders ought to be involved? Or what institutional and technical skills do these stakeholders have? Once you have answers to these questions, you can develop a robust publication plan. And this scoping study can help your team to understand your political, legal, and technical context. Next, we have to set your goals and priorities right. And we know that most useful OCDS implementations are those that were designed around real-world goals and priorities. And to achieve success, you need to understand your policy goals and user needs and use them to inform the design of your OCDS implementation. And of course, you need to identify your stakeholders, and different stakeholders in your OCDS implementation can have different objectives, like journalists, civil society organizations, or policymakers and auditors will all have different goals. So we encourage publishers to consult stakeholders early in design of their OCDS implementation to identify key goals. And of course, you need to build your team. And implementing OCDS is much easier when your team combines both policy and technology experience. Team members might be part of your organization already, or you might need to identify partners who can bring extra insights and skills. What's important is that implementation of data publication should be focused on data use. And we encourage OCDC on implementations that is based on a clear vision of data use, because it's never enough just to collect data or even publish it. It's important to use it, analyze it, and make data-driven decisions. OCDS itself was designed around what we call use cases. And use case is defined as a specific instance of using data to achieve some kind of outcome in a pursuit of goal. And use cases are important to help data publishers and users to identify what metrics, indicators, and questions they want to calculate and answer with data. And it helps to prioritize data fields that they need to collect, what needs they might have for analysis, and what kind of stakeholders should be involved. So design of open contracting data standards and our work with stakeholders around the globe on procurement reforms, we have identified 5 key use cases related to procurement data. These are market opportunities, value for money, public integrity, service delivery, and internal efficiency. In practice, of course, these use cases might intersect. For instance, having more transparent processes, which is public integrity, can increase competition, which is market opportunities. And it might lead you to lower prices, which is value for money. And it's important to understand that for each use case, there are specific data fields that are needed. And these data fields can be used to calculate what we call indicators. And for each of the use cases, we developed a certain set of indicators. And these set of indicators is based on our general use case guide that outlines main use cases of open contracting data. Generally, the list includes 71 indicators related to market opportunity, value for money, internal efficiency, public integrity, and service delivery. And these are recommended indicators. However, of course, you can use other metrics based on the availability of your data. Main indicators proposed describe level of competition and internal efficiency of processes and signal potential risk and areas of improvement. So having these indicators, you can get broad understanding of your procurement market, which can help you to design better tenders or promote effective competition among suppliers or obtain better value for money for the goods and services they procure. So they can also be used by civil society organizations, academia, or journalists that are interested in analyzing procurement market. During this phase, we can advise you on identifying your stakeholders and use cases, finding relevant and most important data fields, and guiding you through the best practices from all over the world. After design stage or design phase comes map phase. And this phase is all about documenting sources of contracting data and establishing how the data maps to OCDS. That is identifying which data elements within your data sources match with which OCDS fields and codes. And during this stage, we invite data publishers to conduct what we call technical assessment and fill out what we call field level mapping template. Technical assessment is meant to identify which IT systems capture and store contracting data and related documents, and how those systems might be connected in order to get a complete picture of the contracting process. The field level mapping template is used to identify how data captured by existing systems maps to OCDS schema. So this mapping will be later used for building some kind of middleware in order to transfer data from existing systems to a format required by OCDS. Even if you're not gonna end up publishing data in OCDS format, so of course we hope that you will, the process of mapping, extracting, and standardizing information allows you to have exhaustive study of the available data and its quality. And it is a great way to understand what's going on in your data, how good it is for decision making, how well it is allows you to understand your procurement market. After this map phase comes build phase. And build phase is all about creating new or updating existing IT system in order to transform data from existing sources to OCDS schema. We have several options for data architecture, for system architecture. And during this stage, we help publishers to define their system architecture, establish their publication formats and access methods to data. And finally, we advise them on how to build a data pipeline in order to transform data and check it before publication. After that comes finally publish stage. And publish stage is all about providing access to contracting data in OCDS format. During this stage, we encourage you to finalize your publication policy and describe your publication for potential users. We encourage you to license your data and set out rules on how this data can be reused. And of course, we encourage you after the publication to collect feedback and gradually improve your data for your users. And by publishing data in this format, you basically joining this huge international community of implementers from governments and municipalities. And what's important is that you're getting access to tools that were built by us that can help you to analyze data, to check for red flags, to calculate indicators, and to test your data for quality. So that brings you huge value from implementing OCDS. And of course, by implementing OCDS, you can make historical data available and comparable over time. So, for instance, from OCDS implementation in Colombia, they mapped data from their old system and their new system and another system they had from for framework agreements. And since all data now in OCDS in this standardized way, they can do analysis on historical information and current data. So that's why it's important to standardize data and to implement OCDS. So back to you, Nanda.
Thank you, Andre. So we're reaching to the end of our presentation. Now, after hearing all the how and what has been useful for other partners around the world in implementing OCDS, you may want to know how can we help you? And then the answer is reach out to us. So what we can do is that we can provide you with technical assistance, like what we do with in other countries, to help you design your implementation journey. What that means is that we can help you map your data set to OCDS, and then we can help you decide what's the best architecture, as well as how to help you prepare the data sets for publication or even internal use. We can do it by using our tools and resources on how to calculate many different indicators using OCDS data, or how to measure, for example, market opportunities, or how to measure competition based on your EGP system data set that is available at the moment. And as mentioned already before by Andre, the OCDS is a free non-proprietary open data standard for public contracting implemented by over 30 governments around the world. And it is the only international open standard for the publication of information related to the planning, procurement, and implementation of public contracts. And it has been endorsed by the G20, the G7, and major international organizations. The tools that we develop will help you prepare your data for publication, while at the same time ensuring the quality and the usability of it. Because we know collecting data is hard work, so we would want to make sure that it's usable and it's in high quality. One of the things that we do is that we help the reformer around the world through Open Contracting Lift program. So it is one of our core programs that helps teams of bold procurement reformers propel their ambitious plans towards systemic change. So the LIFT team has worked with the teams around the world to use public contracting to improve effective governance and support more equitable and green communities. In this program, over the 18-month-long LIFT period, we work closely with each team to provide change management and open contracting support. Teams are selected through a competitive process with new calls for applications over annually. If I'm not mistaken, the next one will be open next year in March or April 2023. Please stay tuned on our website for more information if you want to participate in being part of the LIFT Global Program. And as you all know that, and this has been the discussion of the 2 days in APPeN, as the world is more focusing on ways to fight climate change and mitigate the effects of it, we have also developed a toolkit to help stakeholders to make public procurement more sustainable and more inclusive, and how to actually measure the progress that we have done so far using the existing information and data set that you have. So that will be all for now. Would like to know if there is any question, then this will be the time. That will be all from me and Andre. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Nanda and Andre. Are there any questions that you would like to ask while we're in here? And if any people watching on Zoom, if you use the Q&A function, you can submit a question as well. I know it's a long day, and everybody's anxious probably to come to a close shortly. But why we have them both here, if there's anybody that has a question. If not, well, okay. Well, thank you very much, Nanda and Andre. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad you were able to make it through the whole session, Andre. Good to see you there. So hopefully we'll see everybody live in a future conference. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
And that's the end of this session, and I guess Charlene.
Thank you very much, Joe, for moderating the 11th session for us. We are about to start session 12, which is the final session, more or less, but really the penultimate speaking activity, as we will have closing remarks right after Galia from our Director General, Risa Tang, who will speak right after Galia. So if you will allow, let me introduce Galia to take us through session 12. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlene. I think after 2 days, I am the person who needs no introduction. And I did promise to you yesterday that my presentation for the last session will be the shortest, okay? Because it will be practically talking about everything you already know. Okay, so I'm here to announce good news. So the good news is that Regional Technical Assistance Project TA 10,000, Strengthening Asia-Pacific Public Electronic Procurement Network Phase 2, has been approved last Monday. And special thanks to Director General PBFD, Ms. Risa Tang. She supported this regional technical assistant, and she is an approving authority by delegated authority from the president. Next slide, please. So if you remember from my yesterday's presentation on our journey on e-procurement and how does it fit to the Strategy 2030 of ADB, I talked to you about 7 operational priorities of ADB, which are addressing remaining poverty and reducing inequalities, accelerating progress in gender equality, tackling climate change, making cities more livable, promoting rural development and food security, strengthening governance and institutional capacity, and fostering regional cooperation and integration. In the past 2 days, I think we demonstrated to you that e-government procurement is actually hitting all 7 operational priorities of ADB. And our network is specifically looking at strengthening governance and institutional capacity and fostering regional cooperation and integration. We're mostly talking about cooperation here. So next slide, please. So practically what we are talking about is why invent something new when something that we already started proves to be working reasonably well. So we do add a little bit of bells and whistles on the way. We discard some of the things that appear to be not working, but overall we keep up good stuff. So the good stuff started in TA 8520 with Asia-Pacific Public Electronic Procurement Network that was implemented from 2013 to 2017. We then had the TA 9680, Strengthening Asia-Pacific Public Electronic Procurement Network, that is happened to end this December. And so that we will have an uninterrupted way of actually assisting you, we already have processed a new TA, and someone actually told me that I should demand some kind of a special plaque, you know, like in some countries when you are number 1 million in a city, when you are born, you get some special thing. I think we need to celebrate a special 10,000 TA. We're the first TA with 5 digits. Okay, it's more of a game of luck, I would say, is a personal achievement, but nevertheless. So next slide, please. So what is our rationale for the continued support? We will further cooperation between developing member countries of ADB and other regional procurement networks.
including Inter-American Network on Government Procurement. We will continue to support the implementation of electronic government procurement, including assessments of EGP systems, security audits, procurement, contract management, use of artificial intelligence and machine learning. We are aligned with Strategy 2030 of ADB and Operational Priority 6 and actually 7. ADB will provide knowledge support to developing member countries' integrated digital government transformation agendas, like we started doing with Indonesia, and the efforts to maintain highly performing, sustainable, efficient, and transparent government procurement systems. So we will further try to contribute to continuing improvement of institutional governance. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so what are the 4 outputs? The 4 outputs is like a pyramid. So what we have here, we have the procurement capacity building, and I hope that this event for 2 days have contributed to some of the capacity being built, some of the capacity being shared, and some of the capacity being acquired. We have an output number 2, knowledge products produced. It's good to exchange knowledge, but sometimes it's also good to actually summarize it. And we summarize it in so-called best practices or good practices papers, those that we have identified and those that we have put on ADB website. We have the output 3, which is e-government procurement implementation will be supported. This will be done through assessments and other advice. And output number 4 covers software as a service and or commercial off-the-shelf software solutions supported. We know that we have supported government of Cook Islands, Vanuatu, Tuvalu, and Papua New Guinea through use of software as a service through intent in 2 previous TAs throughout the 6 years period. I did check with some of the countries if they find this support valuable, and I did receive a note. The note is there that the support is indeed valuable. So this actually summarizes my presentation. I put a Menti code that will expire tonight as Cinderella's pumpkin. Can you please go to the next slide? No code. Okay, here is the code. Please scan the code and put some suggestions. What do you want to see in the next TA? What are your suggestions? Okay, thank you. I will put this code somewhere there as well. Okay, and last but not least, I want to acknowledge continuous and valuable ongoing support to the network from the Public Procurement Service of Republic of Korea that has supported the network from the very beginning. I put some links to the presentation, and I do hope that I did keep my promise. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. And I think Charlene will introduce DG Rizeteng for her closing remarks.
Okay, good afternoon again, everyone. And I do want to thank you for your time and thank you for your patience that you've had with us over this past 2 days. I want to thank our participants here in person and also those online. We thank you indeed for the privilege of your time. We would like to close with remarks from our Director General, Risa Tang, and she's the Director General of our Procurement, Portfolio, and Financial Management Department. So she is the leader, the general indeed, of the team of procurement specialists who work with you. I know you are quite familiar with Galia, myself, and Naide, but we're an entire team. We have specialists assigned in the countries that work with you. And indeed, Risa and our two directors, one or two of whom you met yesterday or earlier today, support us and really guide us and lead us as we do the work we do for you. So without any further ado, I would like to invite DG Tang to come up to the podium and give her closing remarks. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, very good late afternoon. 2 days have passed very quickly, and we are now completing the first ever hybrid conference of the Asia-Pacific Public Electronic Procurement Network. We're so delighted with the face-to-face interaction the procurement professionals from the Asia and the Pacific had with each other and ADB procurement staff. Coming of pandemic, which changed overnight the way we worked, we're faced with new challenges of post-pandemic recovery, slower economic growth, unprecedented inflation, and supply chain disruption due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Building resilience and sustainability into procurement systems becomes an absolute necessity, not an option. This year's conference focused on the role of procurement systems plays in achieving Sustainable Development Goals, or say SDGs. There are clear linkages between all 17 SDGs and sustainable public procurement. Whether we are procuring civil works to build an accessible, climate resilient, and fit for purpose school, building or procure health systems with the aim of reaching remote populations, we are looking at sustainable outcomes. We at ADB acknowledge the changes, and we have updated sustainable procurement guidance notes, looking at environmental, social, economic, and institutional dimensions of achieving sustainability. The last 2 days equipped all of you with tools and case studies of good procurement practices. We hope that your attendance contributed to the strengthening institutional capacity of public procurement agencies and gave you some ideas of operationalizing dimensions of sustainability in your day-to-day procurement operations. I was so happy that I approved the new full-year funding for the phase 2 of the Asia-Pacific Public Electronic Procurement Network in November 2022, right before these 8 conferences. I think that's a gift for the conference. We acknowledge the ongoing support and contribution of the Public Procurement Service of the Republic of Korea to the Asia-Pacific Public Electronic Procurement Network, our trusted implementation partner, and without their support, we would not be gathered today. We encourage all of you to think of a roadmap for achieving goal 12.7 of the SDGs to promote public procurement practices that are sustainable in accordance with national policies and priorities. And as you know, every journey starts with the first step. If you map out the steps for the next 3 to 6 months by taking implementable ideas from practices shared from this conference, we all will benefit from the journey. In closing, let me thank development partners, including multilateral development banks, UN agencies, bilateral donor agencies, and other organizations. This conference showcases the strong spirit of collaboration with the World Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Inter-America Development Bank, African Development Bank, OECD, Public Procurement Services of the Republic of Korea, and Open Contracting Partnership. Insights from experts from around the globe, India, South Africa, Indonesia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Mongolia, and Korea, contributed to valuable takeaways from this conference. We also thank all panel members and presenters for their active participation. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG Tang, for these wonderful closing remarks. I think we've come to the end of today's program, of this week's program. I want to thank you all, as I said earlier, for the privilege of your time. Thank you so much for traveling so far. It has been an honor and a pleasure to see you in person after these years. And I also want to extend my thanks to all our online participants. Thank you for staying with us throughout. I'd like to invite any participants with outstanding administrative matters. You could see Naide at the back of the room to continue that, and any networking that you would like to do, please feel free to continue to be present here. Thank you very much.
Your attention, please. All participants from the Pacific Islands, can I see you? Can you please assemble at the back? I will take you to the conference room where you are supposed to meet with Kevin. All participants from the Pacific Islands, please come, stay at the back. I will come and pick you up and bring you to the conference room where you're supposed to meet with Kevin. Thank you.
And all procurement specialists from PPFD, please join us to the right of the room. PPFD procurement specialists, please.